Power panel. Cenk, Uygur, John Iadarola, Caroline Justin. So you guys know damage report. Caroline's on Rebel headquarters. You guys are gonna check that out, and you guys are gonna love it. That's what's gonna happen. It is what it is. Okay. So in a little bit, we believe about 15 minutes, but they might be voting. They're certainly caucusing. They're having discussions. By the way, my collar is popping. We'll get to it. Okay. But Khanna is going to join us in about 15 minutes here. He had a fascinating interview with Jake Tapper on CNN a little while back earlier today. There is huge shenanigans going on, which John's going to explain in the House right now as we speak, and having Congressman Khanna talk about that from the Progressive Caucus is going to be very, very interesting. All right, stay right here. John.
Okay, let's jump into it then. From the very moment that it was clear earlier this week that the Democrats weren't gonna have a great election night, the mainstream media has been trying to blame the Democrats, saying that it's, or sorry, the progressives specifically, saying that it was their fault that the bipartisan bill hadn't passed, and that was what screwed over so-called moderates in their elections. Well, now Pramila Jayapal, head of the Congressional Progressive Caucus, is gonna be asked about whether it's worth it to now pass it, even though now the buck has changed, where that presumably would be the thing that caused the Democrats to lose next year in the midterms. Here's what she had to say.
We're hoping, and roll it. Here's what she had to say, and forward. No, we don't have it, we don't have it.
I suppose she didn't have much to say in the end. No, okay. Well, I have a quote, I'll read the quote section. What's the alternative? To do nothing? I mean, that's not gonna get us anywhere. Part of what we have to do is really understand the economic frustration that people have right now, and I think that is really important for us. So I find that to be interesting in light of the conversation. I know you've been talking a lot about Pramila Jayapal, her role as head of the Congressional Progressive Caucus, and the sometimes indications that she gives that the two tracks, the idea that we're gonna do both bills at the same time, that wavering commitment to that. Now we have the framing of actually doing something as potentially being bad news for next year. So what do you think about what she had to say?
Yeah, so guys, there's a lot of drama happening right now in the House, and they're about to make the deal with progressives even worse because they think progressives are pushovers. We can do anything we want to them and they'll fold. And I have honestly put a lot of that blame on leadership of the Progressive Caucus, which happens to be Representative Jayapal. So it doesn't give me joy to do that because I think she's a good person and I think she's a real progressive, but her negotiation at this point has been, in my opinion, abysmal. And that's why they're getting steamrolled. Now, her answer in this case is perfectly good. She says, well, if you're giving me this choice of we lose political elections, but we pass policy that helps voters, yeah, I'll go with the voters. That's a principled, excellent answer. So credit to Jayapal on that. By the way, we have more about her on a different issue later in the show where she did great in standing up to Republicans. So credit where credit is due, including in this answer. Now, the real issue is the question. Why would you lose the election for delivering for voters? But in Washington, reporters are conditioned to assume and project that assumption onto both the politicians and the audience that if you ever deliver for the voters, you give them anything that they actually like, they'll hate you. And you'll obviously lose the election. My God, if you gave them paid family leave and they didn't have to be driven back into the mines the day after they delivered, well, they would hate you for letting them having 4 or 12 weeks of paid leave. They would hate you for lowering drug prices. What kind of an insane framing is that for the question? But guys, that's how they brainwash you. The reason they ask that question that way is that so it gets stuck in your head. Oh, I guess if the Democrats pass this bill, they're gonna lose the election. Oh, I guess the bill must be really unpopular. When in reality, provisions in that bill have 90% popularity. But look, the press doesn't do it in an evil way. They're generally sad tools of corporate America. So they're hired as news actors. They don't know anything about the news. So their editor tells them, hey, moron, go out there and talk about how this bill is terrible, terrible. And it could really hurt the Democrats. Now, I would have gone further than Representative Jayapal. I mean, it's not a critique. Her answer is perfectly fine. I'm just telling you what I would have done is I would have said, the premise of your question is insane. When we pass a really popular bill, we are more likely to win, not less likely to win. I don't know why you would ask such a weird question. But I'm happy to give you another shot. Go ahead, try another shot. And the real question you should be asking people is, you should be asking Manchin, Sinema, and the conservative Democrats, well, wouldn't you be more likely to lose an election if you spike provisions that have a 90% popularity, 75% popularity, which is exactly what Manchin and Sinema are doing. But yet somehow for reporters in Washington, they think, oh, figuring out what's actually popular is not part of my job. I'm not supposed to do the news. I'm not supposed to know what's real. I'm just supposed to do propaganda. So corporations and Democratic leadership and Republican leadership could be super happy, and we'll have a bipartisan agreement in Washington to rob all of you. And the super sad part is, guys, it's not a conspiracy. They don't know it. They're unwitting tools of a corporate machine, and that's just pathetic. Caroline.
I don't think that it can be stated enough how the popularity of these policies is there. Honestly, that should really be the end of the conversation, and this framing, as you're saying, is so disingenuous. And it's just so interesting the nature of these conversations as pushing a bipartisan agenda. Like at this point, you're not gonna get a ton of, if any, Republican support. And now you have this like very wishy-washy support from progressives. So Democrats are holding on to this idea that, well, at least we can still legislate with bipartisanship at this moment in time, when what this moment in time calls for is for leaders to step up to the plate and do the, I don't know, radical, brave thing and pushing for policies that 100 million Americans are on board with or something like that. I think the messaging is so important, and we just have to keep coming back to this idea that those numbers don't lie. And if you're worried about losing an election, like it was kind of earlier in the week, we kind of saw the whatever losses that are going to be painted by the right as tremendous failures for Democrats. So wouldn't you think that laid a bit more groundwork for us to actually go forward with these these incredibly positive policies? I'm definitely lost, but it's really interesting. As we said, I was trying to figure out what was going on right now, and it's up in the air. So who knows? By the end of the day, we could have some good or bad news.
No, I gotta say something about what Caroline just said there. If you didn't grow up with mainstream media brainwashing, it would seem really strange. You'd be like, wait, every provision in the bill, every one of them polls above 55%, which is really good. The great majority of them poll above 66%. Like 2/3 of the country says yes. Some of them, as I told you, get up to 9 out of 10 Americans saying, I definitely want that, right? So if you're come to this country and you don't know anything about how corporations have taken over our media and use it to brainwash the electorate, you would be like puzzled. Like, why are the journalists telling you that it's an unpopular bill when every provision in the bill ranges from really popular to intensely must have popular? So why are they all lying in mass, in unison? Well, guys like Professor Noam Chomsky figured this out decades ago. It's called manufacturing consent. They're not in the news business. They're in the corporate consent business. And a perfect example of that was Jake Tapper with Khanna just a little bit earlier today. Jake Tapper browbeat him and was like, why don't you just sign on to what Democratic leadership wants, which is a vote for the bipartisan bill that's totally corporate laden pork, okay, that actually adds to them. So why don't you sign on to that corporate bill right now without getting any assurances that we're ever gonna vote for your bill? Why don't you sign it? It's your fault, you're the one blaming it. I mean, it was just pathetic demagoguery propaganda. And in Washington, they're like, he is a credible news anchor.
Yep.
It's a joke.
And the only thing, so saying all of these things that are wildly popular, doing them would obviously be bad for you. That's crazy. The only thing that makes it crazier is, like, couldn't you at least wait until a fresh week before saying that doing something will cause the progressives to be responsible for losing elections? Because like 3 days ago, you said it was their fault for blocking it. we didn't do anything, and so progressives are to blame. Now, if you do something, progressives will be to blame. The only through line, the only logical through line that I can make is that no matter what happens, they're going to blame progressives.
John, I've got to say something about that. After Virginia, Terry McAuliffe, the most centrist corporate establishment Democrat of our lifetimes, loses. And they're like, you see, they went too far left. But he's at the very other end of the political spectrum within the Democratic Party. He's the most right-wing Democrat. Now, if he had won, what would they have said? You see, you can't go too far left.
Yeah.
So mainstream media is lying to you in mass. Well, CNN, New York Times, they're all lying to you. No matter what you do, no matter what happens, they say the country's gone too far left. You cannot go left. Everybody remember, give everything you own to the corporations and the dogs that they bought in the Republican and Democratic parties. It's disgusting that they've hijacked the label of journalism and now use it for propaganda.
Yeah, and look, we saw headlines. Phil Murphy, he squeaked out a narrow win, so he better go back to the center. They're not saying that about Youngkin, obviously, and I would say it's fairly predictable because they're not worried about a Republican going too far. Republicans get in office to block anything from happening. That's what they want. That's like we had for over a decade. Media Matters and organizations like it did a great job of trying to bust through the myth that Fox News was fair and balanced, that it wasn't pushing some sort of agenda. And we just need that for CNN and MSNBC. I know that we've been doing that to some extent. People need to understand that just because we wear shirts that say progressive versus everybody, so we have a perspective, well, they don't wear those shirts. Jake Tapper never says the status quo and that's it. So I guess he doesn't have a perspective, but no, he does. They very clearly want specific things, and what they want is nothing to ever change.
I gotta say one quick thing on that.
I'm gonna be way less compelling in the next block.
Okay, hold on. But you've been incredibly compelling so far. Look, I write about this in my book, justicecomingbook.com. You could pre-order it.
Prove it.
I know it's been a long time coming, but anyway, look, guys, the fact that they privilege their perspective and their bias by calling it objective makes it more deceptive, not less deceptive. By not wearing the shirt saying I'm a corporate tool and I love it, they're saying, oh no, me being a corporate tool is the objective position. Okay, now if you guys want to take a position that actually shows people what people actually believe, and you're actually doing the news and it's based on facts, you're radicals and you're not really credible, okay? Yeah. But if you do the pro-corporate position where we give everything to the corrupt politicians and what they want, and the donors who finance them, and never, ever, ever talk about the donors, even though they're the #1 factor in politics, well then you are objective and credible. That makes them far bigger liars, far bigger than even the right wing. We're not lying to you, we tell you, we're progressive, this is our perspective, but we're never gonna play with the facts. We're gonna give you the facts, and we've done it 1,000 times where it is uncomfortable. We did it earlier in the story. I want Jayapal to be an American hero, but she has not done a good job in negotiations, even though I'm rooting for her, even though I convinced her to join Justice Democrats. But she didn't do a good job. Facts matter. And honestly, the mainstream media at this point are just as bad as right-wing media and Donald Trump. They have alternative facts, and they try to brainwash you with that nonsense propaganda. Caroline, we gotta, unfortunately, we gotta go. So I'm so sorry. Hold that thought.
No.
When we come back, Congressman Ro Khanna is gonna join us. You don't wanna miss that interview.
I want you to take on the spirit of one of my sheroes, Harriet Tubman, who said these words: if you hear the dogs barking, keep going. The torches in the woods, keep going. If they're shouting after you, keep going. If you want a taste of freedom, keep going. Is it right or wrong that somebody has a living wage? Is it right or wrong
to have paid family medical leave? Is it right or wrong to cancel student debt? Is it right or wrong to make sure that no matter who you love, how you identify, that you get the opportunity to live a good life too? This boils down to right or wrong. It's just that simple.
It's about saying to people who work for you, this will not be tolerated on horseback, on bicycle, on tricycle. You will not treat people like this. They are human beings.
Because with these hands, we will rise.
Nina Turner steps into the direct fire sometimes in the name of the people.
And is that we have become numb to some of the very real challenges in this country.
They don't care. I want to say something else, but I know we're going to keep the PG. They just don't care.
You get to keep your doctor. Don't let them scare you about that, because it's not government taking over the service. Dr. Dooley, can I get an amen? Okay, we got a doctor in the house.
If you want clean water, clean air, clean food, keep going. If you want a better country, a better world for yourselves and future generations, you must. And if you know that we are in this fight together, you must.
Did you know that more than 20% of the world's oxygen comes from the Amazon? Why? Because of trees. I know what you're thinking. Of course! So what do we want to do? We want to plant more trees so we can save the climate. It's quite literal. So that's what leads to our new partner, Plant Your Change. Love it. It's so easy. What they do is you take the credit or debit cards you already have and you plug it into the system. And if you so choose, you get to round up every purchase to the nearest dollar and they plant a tree for you, okay? Now you could also choose if you wanna do it on only certain kinds of purchases or only so often, right? And there's nothing wrong with that. But literally every cent makes a difference here. It's Plant Your Change. And if you wanna know more information, just go to tyt.com/trees. Let's go save the planet together.
Now, top. No. No. No.
Today, a terrible day for the internet, a terrible day for America. The internet as we know it is not going to exist anymore.
A real dark day for information, and yet another way that they're bleeding out the democracy.
We're now going to have these gatekeepers of information deciding what we can and can't see, and that's what scares me the most.
Whether you're conservative or progressive or anywhere in the middle, this is the one thing we should all agree to. Protect the internet, because the establishment is coming for it. Don't let them destroy the internet. All right, back on the Young Turks. Joining me now, Representative Khanna. He is in the middle of negotiations right now on the infrastructure bill and the reconciliation bill. Representative Khanna, welcome back to TYT.
Cenk, it's always a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for making the time in the middle of this very hectic day. So I want to ask you first about the state of the negotiations. So in the beginning, as everybody knows, progressives had said that they had a red line, that the Senate must vote for the Build Back Better bill, the reconciliation bill first, then the House would vote on the infrastructure bill, the bipartisan corporate-backed bill. Now that line has moved, and Representative Jayapal and yourself have said, no, the Senate doesn't have to vote for it. The House will vote for both. That kind of defeats the point. But now today, the latest developments are that apparently Nancy Pelosi, Speaker of the House, is asking you guys to not even vote for it in the House, to have a vague promise that you might vote on it later, the bill that progressives actually want, the one that President Biden pretended to want, that you're going to get a vague promise on that. So you just came out of a meeting on this issue. Will progressives fold again and vote the way that Pelosi wants them to without even getting an assurance it'll pass in the House?
Well, Cenk, let me share what our perspective is. I don't think that progressives ever had a red line. What we had were priorities. We wanted to make sure there was robust climate. We wanted to make sure universal preschool. We wanted to make sure expansion of dental, vision, hearing. We wanted to make sure robust housing. We wanted to make sure childcare, free community college, paid family leave. Now, some of those priorities didn't make it in. The expansion of vision and hearing and dental, it's dubious. Free community college didn't make it in. Paid leave right now is on the bubble. But a lot of our priorities have made it in. The universal preschool, the childcare, and actually a very, very robust climate bill. And it's in the framework. So our view is, how do we get this through? Now, no one is going to vote just on the infrastructure bill. What we're debating is whether a vote on the rule on Build Back Better is enough or not, and how do we move this forward? You have to understand there's there's some people who don't want anything.
Out of
in my view.
Out them. Why don't they vote? Why don't they vote? So, Representative Khanna, you're saying, I understand the proposal, the compromise on top of a compromise that Pelosi has proposed, which is that you vote on some nonsense rule about how you will vote later. But let's be super, super clear. You would, if this goes through, you would vote for the one that Republicans and corporate Democrats want, that corporations love, and you would not vote for the Build Back Better bill today. That's just a fact. That's what Pelosi wants. So is that going to happen, or is it not going to happen?
We're pushing back. We want to have the bill both votes today. That's what we're saying. We're saying that the 6 House Democrats, the conservative Democrats or moderate Democrats, whatever you want to call them, actually would vote yes if we have both bills. And that's actually the negotiation taking place today. I probably disagree with you a little bit on the bipartisan infrastructure bill. I think we need the Build Back Better on the climate part. But there are parts of the bipartisan infrastructure bill that are good, like getting broadband to rural communities and urban communities, lead pipe funding that Rashida Tlaib got in. So I think overall the bill is a good one, but my bigger concern is it's not sufficient. We have to have the entirety of the agenda for working class, and that's why we've been pushing so hard to have the vote on Build Back Better.
Okay, so I'm just gonna ask it bluntly. Are you guys gonna fold or not? Because you said that you needed the Senate vote. You have to acknowledge you did not get that. You have retracted your position. That is clearly losing in negotiations, clearly. Now they're saying, well, since you guys can be pressured into anything, we'll bully you further into this nonsense rule vote. You explained on CNN why it's nonsense. You explained it. You said, and you did a great job in explaining it. You said, well, why do we need the Congressional Budget Office to rule on this? Several different entities have already ruled on what it would be. So it is clearly them saying to you guys, we don't think you'll ever stand up for anything. So are you progressives going to stand up and say, no, we will not listen to leadership, bully us into submission, or are they going to say, yes, we submit?
Well, let me just say, we've stood up twice, right? Twice they tried to have a vote on the infrastructure bill, and we didn't. We said, no, we wanted a framework, and the agreement we struck is when the president has a framework, we would support the framework. And I think it's important for progressives. I know there's disagreement out there, but I'm a straight shooter. I think there are a lot of progressive things in the framework. I know people focus on what's not in there, but universal preschool, childcare, the fact that we have huge climate, including a methane tax at $500 billion, that's not spin. That's actually good policy.
But bro, you didn't. But you got it. Look, let's just do one thing at a time. You guys said that you would not vote in the House until the Senate passed Build Back Better. You're now saying, no, we withdraw our position. You have to say that's true, because it is true, right?
Well, there was a disagreement. There were different opinions, but certainly our chair, Pramila Jayapal, said initially, I don't know how she framed it, that we want some ironclad.
I can read a New York Times quote for you. Progressive Democrats warned the House leadership that a majority of their members will withhold their support for a $1 trillion bipartisan infrastructure bill until the Senate passes a second, far larger package containing their spending priorities. That's a fact. So
yeah, but Yeah, the challenge is if we really were to hold to that, we'd have nothing. I mean, you really would then, the president's agenda would not happen and we'd move on to the next issue.
No, but hold on, Representative Khanna, that's of course not true, right? So you wouldn't have it yet. Hold on, you wouldn't have it yet. And then what would happen next is pressure would then go back to Manchin and Sinema, and they would say, well, the progressives are holding the line, and they're doing the same exact thing that Manchin and Sinema are doing. Manchin and Sinema are drawing red lines all over you guys. They're saying, I'm not going to do any of these things.
The difference is, I think Manchin and Sinema would be perfectly fine if nothing happens. I think they'd be fine. Okay.
Well, but Representative Khanna, I understand what you're saying, because they don't mind if these bills don't pass because they don't care about the country. They don't care about their voters. I understand the voters of West Virginia and Arizona are super clear. They want both of these bills. Yeah, they're no. I am going that far. I'm going that far. They definitely are against their own voters, and they're doing it for the donor money. Everybody knows this, Representative Khanna. Everybody. Are you guys ever going to say it? And the reason why I say that, Representative Khanna, is because if you don't say it, then you're right. Then Manchin and Sinema have no downside. They could bury every bill that would help the voters of their states, and they can cash in on it. And Sinema has, she's collected over about $1 million from drug companies because she's corrupt. And so the only way that you guys can get leverage is to say, one, we're holding up the infrastructure bill, which now you guys say you're not going to, so they will steamroll you. And number two, the second thing you could say is, okay, here's our leverage. You guys are corrupt. We're going to call out every single one of your donors. We're going to humiliate you because you should be humiliated because you destroyed the Democratic agenda and you did it for your donors. Now, wouldn't that have an impact, Representative Khanna?
Well, the question is, how are you going to get their votes? I actually don't think that would get their votes.
Oh yeah, it would. Yeah,
you know, I mean, Manchin's in a state that Trump carried by 40%.
But that state hates his position. That state loves paid family leave. It's in the polling, it's not disputable. That state loves lowering drug prices. It's in the polling, it's not disputable. The only thing is, nobody in the state knows that he's betraying them because you guys won't say it. The threat of saying it could get him to move. It's called hardball. If you say it's not gonna move and they're gonna kill it anyway, well, then say, okay, there's gonna be consequences for you guys. Otherwise, do you see that you guys can never win if you don't actually play hardball with these guys? Because then they're gonna steamroll you. Here, I'll ask you another question. If you say, even if you got the best case scenario, Ro, and you said, okay, look, we'll leave Pelosi that we're gonna vote later in the House and Build Back Better.
And by the way, we're pushing back on that, so this is an ongoing negotiation. I mean, but you know, I'm just being
okay. I hear you.
We're pushing for the 2 votes, so let's see how it turns out.
But let's say that she actually meant it, which I think it's all right. Let's say she means it, okay? And you guys actually do pass it in the House. Then it goes over to the Senate. Now remember, Joe Manchin said that he gives you no promise at all that he's going to vote yes. Right. So then he turns around and goes, well, I'm not gonna vote for it. I didn't promise you that I'd vote for it, so it's dead. You voted for my bill, you're a sucker. I'm not voting for your bill. I told you I wasn't gonna vote for your bill. What do you say?
I don't think that because the president has said that he will deliver those 50 votes, and I don't think Manchin will tank the Biden presidency. Okay. Just like he voted for the American Republic. I think a bigger risk is that they will dilute what we pass in the House and take stuff out. But I do think it will eventually pass. But I agree with you that the risk is how much further will the dilution be of that bill?
So Representative Khanna, those are great points. Let's talk about those one at a time. Once you pass the bill that Manchin and Sinema want in the House, you have zero leverage. So now that you have zero leverage, especially because you guys are not willing to threaten their reputation.
No, I'm not convinced that Manchin and Sinema are that much. Let's get the bipartisan infrastructure bill passed. Certainly Manchin. I mean, I think part of it is just let's not spend money. So I'm not convinced we have that much leverage that he really wants the infrastructure bill. But that's a
okay. All right, but whatever little leverage that is, would it instantly disappear? So if you have the vote today or you have it a week from now in the House, it doesn't really matter because either way, your leverage is gone in the Senate. So that's point one. And point two, you say, and every Democrat in the House, and the progressives, as everybody knows, I'm a progressive. I'm fans of the progressive legislators. You've been on our show many times. You've been incredibly generous with it. You've been honest. We appreciate all that. But since you guys are not willing to threaten outing their donors, there goes the second piece of leverage. So you have absolutely no leverage and you have no promise from Manchin. So I'm asking you if you're right. Wouldn't you be right that then Manchin could eviscerate the Build Back Better bill and go, well, I didn't tell you I wasn't gonna eviscerate it, and you knew I was gonna eviscerate it, so I did. I took out every popular provision there is because my donors didn't want it.
I don't believe he will do that because he would then have had made a commitment to the president that was false. Now you're saying theoretically, is it possible that he could eviscerate it? Yes, I don't. I believe it would stay around the 1.75 number. Where I'm most concerned is there going to be a dilution on the methane fee? Is there going to be a dilution on some of the climate provisions? And how much is the revenue going to tax the wealthy? Yes, we have to be vigilant. We have to continue to push, but I think we have to push through the White House. And the president has a huge interest in getting Build Back Better because it's popular, because he knows that he needs this for the midterms and for 2024. And if it's diluted, it's going to depress the base in 2022 and 2024.
He doesn't care about that. He's not even he's barely a Democrat. So Representative Khanna, look, this is an important news point in the question here, because you're saying that Biden has some sort of implicit promise from Manchin and presumably Sinema that they're going to vote for this version of the bill with 1.75.
The framework.
The framework, whatever that means. And Manchin is saying, no, I'm not giving any promises. So what's actually happening here? Does Biden have Manchin and Sinema's promise, or doesn't he?
I think publicly Manchin doesn't want to make those commitments, but our belief is that the president has a private commitment from 50 senators that he can pass this, and that he didn't come to us for many, many months, and he only came to the progressives once he had that commitment. I personally believe that he will pass the Build Back Better agenda, that Manchin ultimately will be a yes vote. But I acknowledge that the most popular provision in this was the Bernie Sanders increase dental, vision, hearing, and dental and vision are out. So I grant you that the bill has lost popular provisions that it should have. It should have a much more robust prescription drug negotiation. It should tax the billionaires and the corporations. It's not raising corporate tax rates because of Senator Sinema. So I'm not here to sort of sugarcoat things. What I'm saying is that we have a moderate president. We didn't win with Bernie Sanders or Elizabeth Warren. In light of that, he's adopted a lot of progressive policies like childcare, universal preschool, and most importantly, climate. And this is significant progress in light of the circumstances. And that's where the disagreement is. Among not just us, but amongst people who've been critical of the caucus.
So Representative Khanna, we're not even talking about disagreement. I think that what remains of the bill is, I think the negotiations went terribly. We lost on incredibly popular provisions.
What grade would you give the bill? What grade would you give the current president's framework on an A to F in terms of progressive goals?
So, Representative Khanna, I grant you that there are parts of the bill that are positive. There's still $550 billion for climate change until Manchin eviscerates it in the Senate and gets rid of it. But okay, for now, in the $1.75 trillion provision, yes, there are some good provisions, including universal pre-K, which, by the way, corporations love because they want to get everybody back to work. So everything that's currently in the bill has basically been approved by corporate donors. Now, that doesn't mean they're all bad. There's some things like universal pre-K that the corporations have allowed us to have because it also benefits them. Are they not merciful? So it's not 100% loss in terms of the bill itself. But in terms of the negotiations, would you then grant to me that if the negotiations were between 1.5 trillion and 3.5 trillion, and in our best case scenario, we're at 1.75 trillion, and we're not even guaranteed to get that you guys have lost the negotiations?
Well, no, because Manchin started out at zero. I mean, that
okay, we started out at 6 trillion. Then okay, then let's meet back at 3.
But we have a case where we have a 50-50 Senate and a 200 and.
By the way, but Representative Khanna, you have 3 House Democrats that can block any bill. So they're 50-50. You're nearly 50-50. Why won't
the difference is the difference is they have an advantage because the status quo is fine for them. If everything blows up, if Joe Biden doesn't accomplish a single thing, there are a lot of people who'll be fine with that. We want to move progress. So maybe you could say
Representative Khanna, that is true. That is true. Okay, but that is why we say your only leverage is to shame them publicly. Look here, let's take one example, and then you've been very generous with your time. Okay, so paid family leave has an 88% popularity. I'm sorry, it has about a 3/4 popularity. Lowering drug prices, the specific provision to lower drug prices has an 88% popularity, 9 out of 10 Americans, including about the same number in West Virginia and Arizona, to be absolutely clear, okay? So what you could do is say, why isn't Manchin and Sinema in favor of lowering drug prices? Why are they against 9 out of 10 Americans? And everybody knows the answer to that. It's because they're being bribed. It's legal bribes in the form of campaign donations, but it is bribes nonetheless. If you said that, of course they would catch feelings and you would be persona non grata on Capitol Hill, you've offended the elites. But it is absolutely true, and it would get a lot of press attention to the fact that they are corrupt, and that would hurt their reputation, the only thing they care about.
I don't think that's the way to make progress and get the vote. I mean, there's a reason Senator Sanders, who's worked with them and no one can question his integrity, chooses to make it about ideas and doesn't choose to sort of make.
You're giving away leverage. You're giving away leverage. Representative Khanna, it isn't about that hey, we're not eschewing ideas. We are in favor of ideas. We're in favor of the idea of lower drug prices. The only people who are against lower drug prices are drug companies. They're giving millions of dollars to Manchin and Sinema. Now, I get you're saying in the middle of negotiations, you don't want to blast them with a nuclear level attack publicly. But if you care about those ideas and you care about those policies and you know you have a winning hand, wouldn't you behind the scenes at least threaten that? And it's obvious that you guys are not threatening that because they're walking around free as a daisy. They don't have any concern at all. And progressives have never shamed corporate Democrats, have never challenged corporate Democrats, and that's why they steamroll us. Isn't all of that fairly obvious?
Well, I co-chaired, as you know, Bernie Sanders' campaign, which every speech was about the hold that the pharmaceutical industry, Wall Street, big corporations have on American politics. He's spoken out. He may not personalize it, but he's spoken about industry.
But if you don't personalize it, you have no leverage. If you don't personalize it, you have no leverage at all. And Representative Khanna, the mainstream press hates progressives. So every time an election is lost,
things are changing. They're not as
really. I just saw your interview with Jake Tapper. It was the most conservative hatchet job I've ever seen. He blamed you for not passing the bill when Manchin and Sinema are the ones who have prevented us from passing it for months and months and months. And then they run McAuliffe, the worst conservative Democrat in the party, and then they blame the left for losing the election. That's insane. When are you guys going to fight back?
I understand that the progressive movement, wants us to be tougher, wants the caucus to be bolder. I get it. I read the Twitter threads here or there. I mean, I see the criticism. Here's what I would say to them. First, be proud of at least 2 times where we took a stand and stood up and didn't have the infrastructure vote, and look at all of the progressive policies we've gotten in there. And then the second thing I'd say is, keep building, keep running, keep challenging incumbents, keep building seats, keep building progressive power. If you want a progressive movement, it's not going to happen overnight. And be critical of us where you think you keep pushing us. But what we're trying to do is maximize what we can achieve in a system where we have a moderate Democratic president, self-described moderate, where we have a 50-50 Senate, and where we have fairly moderates in House leadership. So help us continue to build.
So let me be clear about the facts. Representative Khanna is right that 2 different times Progressive Caucus did stand up, and corporate Democrats had to retreat. Now, unfortunately, at the end, when you give them what they want, they still won. That's also a fact. Those are both true. So of course the end is what matters most, but it is true. And I want you guys to understand, I'm not saying this because he's on. We don't care about access journalism. We don't care about it if no one comes out, okay? Representative Khanna has been consistently the most honest and the bravest. And he's the only one that will come on progressive media to discuss these issues and to have a frank conversation. We've asked everyone, you see Representative Khanna, you don't see the others. So tremendous credit there, okay? But Representative Khanna, I've got to say at the end, we need, the progressive base and progressive media needs you guys in Congress to understand. It isn't that we're venting. It isn't about passion. It isn't about emotion. It's about strategy. And if you don't have leverage on the corporate Democrats, and you never will in appealing to their principles or their voters. They don't care about principles. They don't care about their voters. This bill proves it beyond a shadow of a doubt. These bills are incredibly popular in West Virginia and Arizona. And I challenge every corporate media hack out there that watches this interview. Do your math. Do your job, look at the polling, report the polling, report what the people of West Virginia and Arizona and the whole country actually believe. Stop lying about what the people of America want. They want this bill. Representative Khanna is right that they want this bill. So finally, Representative Khanna, do you get that if we're asking you to fight back against the corporate Democrats because of leverage, that's the only way that you can out the corruption and why they're voting no? It is so important. If you put a spotlight on why they're voting no, then it gets people to ask Manchin and Sinema. Hey, we did a story, Manchin made $5 million from his coal company. That's a fact, that's on TYT.com, but you could go check it anywhere. And he has another $5 million in wealth in his coal company. How is that not relevant? And that's on top of the campaign contributions. Okay, so just the actual question was, do you get that that's leverage and it's strategy? It's not just to vent, that there is a purpose behind it, and we could use that purpose to actually pass the policy.
I believe, Cenk, that there are different roles for different people in a democracy. I believe that the role of progressive legislators is to help mobilize, but then also to figure out how we get things done. I think that there's a role for independent media. I think there's a role for mobilization. I think there's a role, as you know, I've always supported primary challenges, and there's a role certainly in Arizona where you have a Democratic state and a senator who's voting differently than Mark Kelly for us to have mobilization. So I believe what I don't want to have happen, and let me end with this, is this kind of sense, well, it doesn't matter. We got these Justice Democrats in there. We got AOC, we got Ilhan, we got Rashida, we got Pramila. We got a bunch of folks in, Jamal Bowman and Cori Bush, and nothing is changing. And we had Bernie Sanders' energy, and let's just leave. Look at how far we've come from 2016 to now. Look at the fact that what has become the center of the Democratic Party. Is it perfect? No. Is the progress fast enough? No. But if we can do this in 5 years, think about the next 10. And the worst thing, I'd rather people beat up on me, criticize me, just don't disengage. Keep winning races, keep building. I'm confident eventually we'll get a progressive president, progressive leaders, and that's what will allow for the real change.
All right, we'll leave it at that, and I'll give you one last piece of context for the audience that corporate media doesn't do. Representative Khanna was the first person to say that he would join Justice Democrats when he knew that it would involve primarying Democratic incumbents. That was an incredibly brave decision, and so that has defined him. And you should know that context here, even if you're frustrated with his positions today, if you are, right? And he just laid out a case for why you shouldn't be, and you should be excited about the future. So Representative Khanna, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it.
Always a pleasure.
Thank you.
Take care.
All right, we got to take a break. We'll be right back. All right, guys, some reactions to the interview instantly coming in through our members. Just Be Anti-Racist says, in other words, Khanna, yes, we will fold. Mama Bear Pelosi would never lie to us. Now that's of course Jess's interpretation. There are others. Turkosaurus Rex says, big credit to Cenk for holding Rose's feet to the fire. John Bogino says, props to Representative Khanna for coming on TYT and facing these tough questions. Great interview, Cenk. Guys, I said it twice during the interview. I'll quadruple down now. We asked everyone else to join us. Only Representative Khanna did. He was the first, he's the last. He's the one who's willing to go out there, stick his neck out publicly to actually have this discussion and to take tough questions. So if you're, like I said, if you're frustrated with Representative Khanna's position, you should be a lot more frustrated that everybody else has that position and is not willing to defend it, okay?
That's true.
Especially leadership in the, whether it's Progressive Caucus in the House, Representative Jayapal, and yes, Bernie Sanders. Representative Khanna talked about, you don't think Bernie Sanders has bad intent. Absolutely not, I don't think he has bad intent at all. That doesn't mean he has good strategy. Let's be honest, our job is to be honest with you guys. Does any of this look like good strategy so far? Okay, so Varden right now going to super chat. Varden says, there's no reason that you believe anyone when they quote give their word or promise. Yeah, I agree with that. It's political nonsense talk. Oh, well, are you questioning my honor? Dude, I don't care about your honor. You're either gonna vote or you're not gonna vote. I don't care about anything other than your vote. So you vote first, we vote second. That was the original proposal, and that's what they should have stuck with all the way to the end. And they shouldn't have cared how much Pelosi and Biden are crying. We told you they would do that. We were very clear that they would try to run out the clock, use BS pressure about the time running out, and then pressure you to cave in and vote on only the bill they want. And we were exactly right, and you saw it with your own eyes. Bernie Fora on a different note says, finally got my sweet bomber jacket. That's the one that John normally wears on Fridays. Shop TYT.com for that. Peter Hamby writes in.
Before it's gone, they sell out very quickly once they're back in stock, just a heads up.
I didn't even know they sold out, so panic. Peter Hamby says, to Representative Khanna, no haiku today. Have you had a chance to talk to some of the Democrats and question why they despise some of the items in the BBB bill? It's a good question, Peter, we didn't get to it. But the reality is they never have those conversations because it's awkward. Everybody knows why they're against it. They're against it because they got bribed. And so we are out of time, but I want to thank Bias Reduction, who gave 100 gift subscriptions on Twitch. And that happened last night in Power Hour with Nina Turner. You're the best, Bias Reduction. We appreciate it. All right, back on TYT, Cenk, John, and Caroline with you guys. That was an interesting interview. And so we've got more news for you all. So John, take it away.
Okay, let's do it. Pfizer has developed a course of pills that they say cuts the risk of being hospitalized or dying as a result of COVID if you become infected by about 90%, according to their recent trials. They did a study of 1,200 COVID-19 patients who were selected for having a higher risk of developing serious illness. And in their study, people who took Pfizer's pills were far less likely to end up in the hospital compared to those who got placebo pills. This is where it gets a little bit uncomfortable. None of the people who got the real pills died, but 10 people who got placebo pills died, according to results summarized in a Pfizer press release. And so bear in mind, this has not yet been adjudicated by the CDC. They will eventually go over this data once Pfizer completes 2 more trials that are currently ongoing. It's believed that by the end of the year, they'll submit this to the government to be looked at for possible sale. And if that were to happen, it would probably take until the beginning of next year. So all we have so far is a result of what they are saying based on their internal studies. But that said, the results seem pretty impressive. You take this course of pills inside of a couple of days of showing your first symptoms from COVID-19, and it massively lowers the chance that you will get sick or die, according to what they say. What do you think?
All right, here's what I think. Oh, finally. Okay, guys, this is amazing news. And not only publicly in the science that we're seeing, but also there's a friend of mine who is one of the top experts in this field. He looked at the actual data set itself. It's true, it's real. And whether it's 89%, of course, that's just one test, right? But the overall idea that the pill is real and does mitigate the damage is true. And understand there's two great pieces of news about this, which means this thing's almost done. Number one is this is not something you take ahead of time. This is something you take after you get sick. So this is all the Trump guys who are in the hospital saying, can I take the vaccine now before they die? No, you're gonna be able to take the pill, so it's okay, we're gonna save your life. You didn't really want it, but okay, we're gonna save your life anyway. Okay, and I say we here, but in the general country, the rest of us, the sane part of the planet, okay? And number two, it totally works. There's another pill that got to about 50% efficacy. If this is 89% efficacy, almost no one who takes it winds up hospitalized or dead. That means COVID is done. Who cares about getting normal sick, right? We've all been normal sick 1,000 times in our lives. And so, by the way, conservatives, now to turn to politics for a second, now you'll see, it won't matter because you don't care about facts, you'll just move to the next identity issue and the next culture war issue, right? But you'll see, we're not gonna make you wear masks and take vaccines if there's other ways of preventing it. Like if this pill was around from the beginning, yes, taking the vaccine is better because it prevents spreading the disease. But with the pill, since people are not going to die, I don't really care. And you'll see that we don't care. As soon as the pill is out, I don't care. Go wherever you want. Look, don't listen to the scientists and the doctors, but my opinion is take your mask off, do whatever. I don't care about your life other than trying to preserve it. Your freedom, go nuts, man, no mask, just go hug and kiss and do in public in tight closed spaces indoors. We don't care, we're not trying to control your lives, we were trying to save it. And if the pill does that, then great, for God's sake, get in the market and let's go. Caroline.
Yeah, I mean, I think we all know that the effects of COVID, whether the physical, mental, emotional, like those are never going to be over. That it's so ingrained in our culture and society right now that, saying like it's over, hooray, is we all know that this is going to be with us in many ways for a long time to come. I agree, that being said, that this is a really remarkable step forward, but I do appreciate, John, your sort of emphasis on the fact that this is the research from the company producing the pill. So I likewise am excited for those other studies and for different companies to come up with similar results, just because I think that a lot of what we see with the vaccine hesitancy, of course, not in the far right sort of red-pilled kind of parts of the internet, is just this mistrust in the in big pharma in general. And so I think, I'm still crossing my fingers, but I think it'll be a warm welcome once we have just less of a monopoly over these studies as they move into just broader recognition. But yeah, this is incredible. I didn't know something like this was possible. It feels like very well deserved for humanity at the end of all this.
Yeah, I just want to clarify two things there. Number one is the information is public. Do I trust drug companies? Period? No, of course it depends. What are we trusting them on, right? And but are they likely to put out false information and ruin their stock when they're riding high? It is very, very unlikely, right? So and people that are experts have checked their public information and believe it's true. Again, you always want a second test, you always want more verification, et cetera, but it's just excellent news for today. And the second reason why it's excellent news, guys, is because people are psychologically more adverse to a shot. And my theory, and this is fun speculation, is that because in the movies, the bad guys will always like inject you with something. And I'm totally serious. And by the way, why do you think we have racial bias in this country? Because local news put up pictures of black guys 24/7. My whole life growing up, you guys are younger than I am, but they told you, oh, criminals, criminals, criminals. And that got into your head, right? And so in the movie's case, accidentally, unwittingly, the bad guys always inject you with something. So it creates this psychological feeling of like, oh no, don't inject me, right? A pill, Oh, I take a pill when I have a headache. That's totally fine. Yeah. So my guess, and by the way, conservatives don't want to die, but they got weirdly decided to die on this hill because Tucker Carlson and others told them to, right? And so now they're going to be kind of relieved to not have to die. Do you see what I'm saying?
Well, I want to throw this out here. I want to possibly finally, after more than a year and a half, go too far. It's been impossible from the beginning of this pandemic. There was no prediction for how pro-COVID the right could be that you could make that they wouldn't eventually surpass. So, and by the way, I want to remind people, now it seems like the most obvious thing in the world, but before the vaccine was public, I said on the show, Tucker Carlson is going to turn against the vaccine, and everyone was like, that's crazy, why would they do that? It's Trump's vaccine, they want to go back to normal, and now literally every single right-winger still to this day is against it. So,
and Jimmy Dore.
And other people as well. Why are we assuming that this would be different? Just because it's a pill, it's still Pfizer, it's still suspicious.
No, but
it's not just the injections, they won't wear masks. The simplest thing, it doesn't even go in your body unless you chew on it or something. Why would they? This is too good. This would solve the problem. There is gonna be some knee-jerk need because it's not just the individuals, it's the grifters. The grifters are feeding a desire to not be a part of the solution. An identity designed in opposition to what Biden and the country are trying to do. And so why would they give up on this?
No, but John,
they should have marketed it as for when your ferret has a sore stomach or something. Then maybe they would have taken it. I don't buy that they're gonna take this thing.
No, but John, that's the beauty of the pill is that we don't need the right wing anymore to be safe. Because what were we worried about? We were partly worried about them losing their lives because we're decent human beings, right? But we were mainly worried that they were going to spread the disease. And when the Delta variant hit, that's exactly what happened. And they spread it, and good people who had already been vaccinated got killed anyway. Colin Powell, immunocompromised, and he got killed because of reckless people. But when you have the pill, you not only can get vaccinated if you're a responsible person, but even if you get sick, you could take the pill afterwards. So you would be double protected and very unlikely to die, very unlikely. If that's the case, then the Republicans can be as reckless as they want. That's why even though your prediction is rock solid normally, there isn't anything that they wouldn't do that's there's no crazy enough, right? But in this case, John, I think that since we won't care, they won't care because their whole thing is to own the libs. And now the libs will say if they're rational, do whatever the hell you want, man. I can take the vaccine and I can take the pill afterwards. So I'm fine. As long as I'm fine, I don't give a rat's ass what you do. You see what I'm saying?
That's interesting, yeah. Caroline, any final thoughts on this?
I mean, I think the marketing in some weird animal-focused way couldn't hurt. Why not? Could do both.
It's technically it's ephedra for monkeys, so it's totally cool. You should try it out.
Yeah.
One other thing I would ask though, does this severely cut the chance and severity of long COVID symptoms? Because there are still long-term.
I got you, but John, at some point we got to let it go. Right.
No, I need this. My life has been so great over the past 2 years.
Yeah, I know. That's the other thing, guys. I mean, put aside the politics again. We can travel again. We can go to the movies with peace of mind again. And by the way, John, you say there's no harm in the mask. I hear you, there's absolutely no harm. I've done it throughout the entire thing. It's been no big deal, and it's a human decency to care about other people's lives, right? Having said that, I hate it, okay? I do it because I'm a decent person who cares about their well-being, even after I got vaccinated, right? But I don't like the feeling on my face. I don't like sunglasses because they obstruct my face, and I definitely don't like the mask. So I'm going to be relieved to take it off, right? So, and don't worry, Tucker, we're not gonna make you drink Starbucks coffee every day, and we're not gonna make you wear the mask past the pill, and we weren't making you anyway. The government never said, you must do it, right? They pass other things that you pretended were a national mandate.
Yes. Okay, well, this is gonna have to be a slimmed down version, but let's at least quickly comment on another important story. The campaign finance system here in the US is very loosey-goosey, but one thing that generally has been difficult to do fully out in the open and legally is to have foreign money directly influencing American politics. It happens from time to time, let's be clear, but there are regulations against it. Well, we're about to lose one of those, and that is because the FEC has now cleared the way for foreign donations to go towards ballot initiatives, which, depending on the state you live in, might be a very significant part of how things get done. We're here in California, where there are constant, massive ballot initiatives, and they raise massive amounts of money. Well, now more and more of that money might be coming from other countries. So foreign nationals are currently barred from donating to US political candidates or committees. But with this change, they will be able to directly influence both our voters as well as domestic policy. And we will have to see how this is eventually adjudicated later on by the Supreme Court, which, as we know, is awesome. Some of these ballot initiatives have to do with the nature and function of our democracy. And so how much of this will foreign money eventually get to influence, we don't know for sure, but this is definitely sending us down a very different road.
Okay, so this is disastrous news. Now, bribery is international. Different companies, this is flat out so let me explain. In this case, it's not going to politicians, so bribery is a little bit of a misnomer, but corruption is definitely the correct umbrella. It's under the umbrella of corruption. And in this case, they're buying elections as opposed to politicians, which is actually more efficient. Why bother giving money to a politician, hope he does the right thing, and then he's gonna have pressure and he's gonna have to worry about his voters and he's gonna have to do all that lying, but no, just buy the election. So ballot measures, and now here's a hilarious part of the story. The degree to which America has become corrupt is immeasurable. The FEC said ballot measures are not elections. That's why foreign governments and foreign companies can buy them, can put unlimited money in them. What do you mean they're not elections? Of course they're elections. We go into a voting booth, we vote on the ballot measure in an election. No, it's Orwellian, guys, but it's not right wing or left wing. By the way, one of the Democratic commissioners voted for this corruption. Okay, so that's why it was 4-2. The Democrats, corporate Democrats, are just as corrupt as corporate Republicans, just as corrupt. Okay, and so in this case, they said, oh, any country wants to come in and buy a ballot measure, and so wrap your mind around it. This originally came from Montana. The case did. So there was a foreign government, a foreign company that is taking public land of Montana and drilling on it. The people of Montana don't want it, but they do a ballot measure, and the foreign company spends unlimited money lying and pretending that it's actually for the people of Montana and it helps them with their public land. And you say, well, the voters should know better. How the hell would they know better? Who knows the intricate details of that ballot measure? And no, they unfortunately get their information in that case from the ads, because the news almost never covers stories like that. So they almost have no way of getting that information. In fact, credit to Axios for covering this story. I've seen it in no cable news, no coverage at all. Did you know that foreign companies can now buy our elections? No, because the corporate media didn't tell you. Why? Because they're also corporations. And by the way, it's a slippery slope. And the reason why corporate media is super hush hush on this is because, remember, a lot of their shareholders are not Americans. We call them American corporations, but are they? And a lot of them then go and do like, oh yeah, my real headquarters in the Cayman Islands. So they want international corporations to be able to buy every election in America. So the corporate media is thrilled with this. They're like, oh my God, corporations have more power. Now we can just do ballot measures saying, you know what, we're gonna ban all online programming. Why not? They're our competition, it's annoying us. Remember, look, I'm no fan of Elon Musk now, but remember when local car dealerships were just bribing officials in places like New Jersey and saying to them, just don't let Tesla have dealerships. And they literally passed a law saying Tesla cannot have dealerships.
Or can't sell unless they have dealerships.
Yes, and they don't have dealerships, so they couldn't sell. It's unbelievable what you could bribe American officials into, and now you could buy elections. And guys, one last thing, and I'm gonna come to Caroline. Any government can do it. China can do it. Saudi Arabia can do it. Of course, Israel can do it. But of course, Canada can do it. Of course, UK can do it. And guys, it isn't about the countries so much. Our new rulers are multinational corporations. So what difference does it make if a corporation is based in Israel or Australia or Denmark? It doesn't make any difference at all. They're coming here to rob you, and the FEC just said, rolled out the welcome mat and said, come on in, most corrupt country in the world, you're welcome. Caroline.
Yeah, this is truly jaw-dropping. It's an absolute disgrace to voter transparency. I mean, ballot measures are notorious. In California, at least, we often joke about how they are the most boring but important parts of the election process. And because of that, very few people actually know what they're voting on and have to have a photographic memory of like, yes, no, going into the polling station. We need to be making voting easier and more accessible and able to be understood by more people. And this is the exact opposite of that. And I'm sure this is something that happens nationwide, but every election when we have the specifically regarding like kidney dialysis and the commercials and the messaging, it's impossible to understand. And having this type of foreign donations is just going to make already insanely complicated messaging even more complicated. And yeah, as you said, this is going to quite literally allow corporations to take over at the municipal, state, federal level. And it just flies in the face of everything that the Democrats and everyone has been talking about with regards to voting rights. And it's incredibly sneaky that taking these ballot measure propositions and making something that is already so archaic and so hard to understand and just making it more corrupt. It's a disgrace, quite frankly.
Yeah, and I want to clarify one other thing. It's not just foreign companies, it's any foreign national. So any Saudi prince can buy any ballot measure in America now. And for right wingers, America first? Are you kidding me? They just sold America out. Iran can buy elections, Venezuela can buy elections. Maduro can come in and spend unlimited money on all these ballot measures and you might never even find out. I mean, look, you're hoping the corporate press is on your side because on economic issues, you think, oh, they're so liberal, but on economic issues, they're super conservative, right? They're not on your right wing side anyway. They're on the corporate side, you knuckleheads, they're robbing you blind. Anyway, so you're thinking, oh, well, they would out Maduro and they would out Iran if they were in these. First of all, they don't out anybody. They don't out corporate Republicans, but they also don't out corporate Democrats. They've been protecting Manchin and Sinema for months straight here. Yeah. So you think they're gonna out other corporations or foreign nationals? And second of all, maybe they out the guys you think you don't like. Are you sure they're gonna out a guy from Tajikistan? Well, what if he's really, really rich and he's also buying ads on CNN and MSNBC and Fox News? Yeah. So the reality is this means there is almost no limit to anyone across the world engaging in the open auction that is American elections. I'm sorry, I said elections, but I'm gonna quote Axios so you know that I'm not exaggerating. In a 4-2 vote in July, the FEC ruled ballot initiatives are not elections under existing federal law. Isn't that amazing? Ballot initiatives are not elections.
You vote in them. I mean, the only time you ever hear of them is when you're in a polling station.
And by the way, corporations are human beings.
My friend.
These are actual decisions made by the American system. It's a joke. The whole world laughs at us. Look at how corrupt America is. They call other countries corrupt. They legalize corruption. Hey guys, anybody can go buy an election in America. So that's where we are now, where the rich will have everything and they don't even have to be American.
Unless the Supreme Court saves us. One last joke to end the week. Anyway.
Supreme Court's gonna be like, corruption, what name so? Yes!
Say no more.
Yeah, the Supreme Court has led corporations pour unlimited money into politics, and that's how we lost our democracy in the first place. The Supreme Court's gonna be salivating over this case. Yes, 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 yes! That's what's gonna happen at the Supreme Court. And then feckless Democrats who are actually corrupt and pretending to be feckless will come and go, oh, there was nothing we could do. Well, you could pass an amendment. Oh no, an amendment's really scary and dangerous. Don't have a convention, no. That would be real, that could upset the status quo. Exactly. All right, it is what it is. This country's totally screwed. It's now nearly 100% corrupt. Okay, so that's the reality, that's the news. It's not a good day for it, but it is what it is. All right, everybody check out Damage Report. It's an excellent show.
We have our days.
1 o'clock Eastern, every day, Monday through Friday. Check out Caroline on Rebel Headquarters. Wonderful videos, super popular. So when we come back, Francesca Fiorentini, Jayar Jackson, and amazing, infuriating stories about the right wing. We'll be right back.
Welcome to the Damage Report. I'm John Iadarola. This is gonna be a big one.
Meanwhile, in the Arctic, you know where this is going. You watch the Damage Report, the Arctic's on fire. Obviously, why would we be talking about the Arctic except to tell you that it's melting once again? The Republicans aren't that interested in it. I wonder why. Lift out of poverty up to 3.7 million people, including an estimated 1.3 million children. Hashtag save the children? Not if it costs money. I mean, come on.
At TYT, our mission is to boldly pursue truth, challenge the establishment, and drive positive change. At a time when corporate capture of our media, our government, and our politics is nearly absolute, everyday working people need a champion to fight for them and to push back against the powerful interests that threaten our democracy itself. At TYT, we're proudly progressive and call out corruption and duplicity wherever we see it, from Republicans, Democrats, or anyone else. And unlike mainstream news media outlets, we're not beholden to corporate advertisers, to defense contractors, to Wall Street, or to Big Pharma. We only have to answer to our audience, and for nearly 2 decades, we've accomplished that by delivering honest, timely, and insightful perspectives on the day's news without fear or favor, or concern for whose toes we might step on, or which powerful elites we might offend. And while we're super serious about the news, we also manage to do it in a way that is fun and lighthearted. We can do this together and serve our audience, and yes, have fun doing it.
How in the world are you going to get the right to vote if you don't already have the right to vote? That's impossible. Reason they tell you things are impossible is because they don't want you to try. It only took 7 years for that to get an amendment to get a right to vote.
Does this result in millions upon millions of Americans losing their coverage? And we've been waiting to find out, and now we know, yes, it will cut millions.
Public education was supposed to be the way to equalize everyone regardless of their socioeconomic status. But if you come from a family that's poor, how are you gonna afford grade school for your kids?
This fight is about fairness and morality. It's about the American values.
You think that black people all across the country, in every city, were all lying when they said the police abuse us and the police kill us when they should? No, of course they weren't lying. Yes, it does happen. Yes, they do get targeted more.
Why are we going to put immigrants in prison for 5 years, which American taxpayers have to pay for, if we're so concerned with immigrants using up our so-called resources?
We're gonna do both. We're gonna fight Trump and we're gonna fight the establishment. It's not that hard. Yes, you can do both at the same time. Go tell them. ShopTYT.com has new shirts like this one. And you're thinking, Cenk, what is that one? I can't see it other than the black. Yes, so I'll show it to you. If you can read this, you're not practicing social distancing. Yes! Now, you were practicing social distancing. This is over video. But overall, you get it. ShopTYT.com. Drop it. All right, power panel, Cenk, Jayar Jackson, Francesca Fiorentini. Good to see you guys. We have got a lot of news for you all, and we're gonna try to squeeze it in this hour. And then, of course, for the members, we got an extra bonus episode. Make sure you're checking that out. I like this new button we have here. This side? No, this side. Join. That's for folks on YouTube. The join button's right below. You can get the bonus episode. You get all of our coverage. And you can go back and watch the coverage anytime you want. Plus, you help to try to bring a progressive message out there, change, and actual honest reporting. So, Jayar, take it away.
Let's do it. During a Judiciary Committee hearing on the Texas anti-choice bill that has been getting all this news lately, Representative Roy decided to have a bit of a particular and pointed response, an argument that focused in on the heartbeat part of that heartbeat bill. As we know, the bill does require that generally no abortions are allowed after 6 weeks, which again is when they can detect a heartbeat. So let's go into his argument and how he believes that many people are missing that real point of life versus law. So let's listen to what he has to say.
The one word that has been consistently missing from my colleagues on the other side of the aisle today is heartbeat. Because my colleagues on the other side of the aisle don't want to start with the concept of heartbeat. That's what this law is titled. That's what drove and motivated the people of Texas, was to protect life when there was a heartbeat that was able to be identified. Every one of us in this room has a heartbeat. And that's what is at the center of this whole conversation. But my colleagues on the other side of the aisle don't want to start with that. He's starting from the premise, not from the starting place of life and trying to defend life, but from the standpoint of law with respect to our current abortion law. But that's because my colleagues don't want to start with the concept of life, because it's a messy business. And again, I would reiterate, my colleagues on the other side of the aisle will not want to, have not wanted to talk about the heartbeat because they know it undermines their position.
The heartbeat does undermine their position because they're not focused on life. It goes back to, I believe, the thought process of making sure that you dub your opponents, people who want some autonomy for people's own bodies and things like that, to be seen as not caring about life. When many times the decisions that go into things like those, like abortions, whether to do it or not for many women, is based in life. It is based in thinking about the lives of them, others around them, and sometimes the baby. So it's not so much as a disregard, again, is my opinion, but thinking further about it. But there's this moral superiority thing that they're pushing that Representative Jayapal just was not gonna be dealing with. Let's listen to her response to Chip Roy.
You know, Mr. Roy, you're right. We have different starting places. I start with the Constitution. I start with the Constitution, and I start with the constitutional right that I have to make choices about my own body. And I also am very offended by the idea that anybody on your side would call me a murderer for making a choice about my health and my body that you cannot even begin to understand or know what I was dealing with. So please do not be paternalistic towards us as we make choices that are our choices. Nobody knows the circumstances we go through. Nobody understands what we have to think about. And by the way, nobody except us is actually, the pregnant person is actually the person that is affected along with anybody that we choose to bring in. And you know what? I would like to leave protecting my health to my doctor and to me. I don't think that Ms. Pinheiro or I or any other person who makes this constitutionally protected choice should be traumatized by being called a murderer. That is just outrageous in my mind.
Seeing responses like this, I think, show us where this argument is shifting, because Republicans, conservatives, anyone who have been on the side as far as anti-choice, we're doing with this morality, like everyone else that's not on board for this, or everyone else, these unknown women are the worst people in our society. What about the children? And more women like Pramila Jayapal, we're talking about their experiences, their past, and they're elected officials with big names now, and everyone knows who they are. And there's a courage when it comes to telling your stories and why those things happen, which honestly shouldn't even have been necessary. But here we are, and they're losing more and more ground to say how moral they are when you hear the actual things that happen to people and the reasons why they do it, because their narrative is being taken from the people who are against choice, and are now they have to explain themselves further in the face of real stories from real people.
So I've been kind of tough on Representative Jayapal in regards to the negotiations on the infrastructure and reconciliation bills, but this was wonderful and it was cathartic, and we appreciate it. And it was strong and it was courageous. It was courageous for her a couple of years ago to say she had an abortion because of the stigma that the right wing has put on it unfairly. And she fought back for a lot of women when she did that. And now she used the word that I think is, that Democrats should have used for a long, long time. And I'm thrilled that she had the courage to say it as well. She said, "You're calling me a murderer. Let's just be honest about it, right?" Mm-hmm. And I'm not going to stand for it. And so, look, in my book that one day will come out, you can pre-order at justicecomingbook.com. I make the point that all this QAnon stuff actually started with abortion, because what does QAnon do? They say, oh, they're killing babies and they're drinking they're molesting kids and they're killing them, they're drinking their blood and they're killing babies. Well, what's the main point that the right wing makes about abortion? They're killing babies. They're all murderers. But they say that, they imply that, and Democrats never, ever fight back. And so finally, Jayapal was like, "No, I'm going to fight back." I can't thank her enough for that, Francesca.
Yeah, no, 100%. And I think she has it in her to be that kind of a fighter, right? And we've seen a much more diplomatic side of her when it comes to the Build Back Better Act and all that. So it's nice to remember, like, oh yeah, she's really got it. And Chip Roy was just speaking in circles. I don't know what he's talking about. The heartbeat, you got it, goes boom, boom. We've got, also very presumptuous to assume everyone in Congress has a heartbeat. I think we've determined many of them don't. So that's number one. But Jayapal is also, being bold and honest with what she's saying, which is the Constitution, right? We're talking about the Constitution. They're legislators. They are not priests. They are not elders of a church. There is a separation of church and state. This has been decided. It is about the Constitution. And finally, when it comes to the heartbeat, who has one, life, whose life gets to be prioritized. Again, you hear in Chip Roy's statements over and over and over again, they want you to focus on the life of a zygote, of something that is not actually viable, right? Like it doesn't matter. That little life, the zygote's soon to be life, potential life, unwanted as it is always above women's lives and always above the person who's pregnant's life, like constantly. And again, I've done a lot of reporting on this. I went to El Salvador. I saw what happens when you put the rights of a fetus supposedly in their constitution. Women die. They just die. They have to carry no matter what kind of fetus, no matter how unviable it is to term, and then they die. They're denied treatments for it. That's where we're going. That's where many of these states are going.
I want to have one more thought about the courage part about this, because we're talking a lot about how women have been. I don't know what's wrong with my chair. A lot of times women had to come out and talk about their experiences and things that they went through and how it's courageous that they went that direction. It would be courageous for a lot of conservatives and pundits, anybody who is lambasting folks who honestly, in many cases, these guys don't know honestly, the woman's body. They don't understand how pregnancy works. They don't understand the many different things that can happen to a woman during pregnancy, before, during, and after. So if you're gonna have the argument, you should at least put your personal part in this too. If you have this morality, the entire argument is how moral you are, how much better you are, how much closer to God that you are. So, I don't think this is a stretch. Many of these conservatives have had some situations with abortions. Maybe it's a wife, maybe it's a former girlfriend, maybe it's a mistress. We always say mistress, maybe it's your wife. Maybe it's that legitimate relationship, because we always give it to that illegitimate relationship. Maybe it's a woman on the side, but maybe it's your wife and you've made that decision at some point in y'all's marriage. that you did this. When are these courageous conservatives gonna come forward and say, I was once a murderer, and now I've seen the light. I've seen how bad it is, and now that's why I'm on this side. Because there's no way 100% of these folks have never been involved in a situation where they had to make this decision, because tons of people have, and we've heard stories about people who are hypocrites on this. So if you really have the moral high ground, tell us how you were once there and why you've had this change of heart. Because that is the basis for your entire argument. And if you want to be moral and real and close to God, stop lying, say what you've done, and say how you've been forgiven. That's the basis of the Christianity that apparently this country is run on, that if you've done something wrong, you've gone to your priest, you've gone to church, and you've admitted your sins, and you've been forgiven. When are you guys gonna start coming forward? Because now we have people who are trying to defend people's rights that have to come forward instead.
Yeah, I'm gonna do one last follow-up on Jayar here, because you could then extend and go, well, we know some Republicans have gotten their partners to get abortions and paid for it. Representative Desjardins from Tennessee has admitted he's asked for 3 different abortions, and they did it. They did 3 different abortions. I believe it was 2 with his wife and 1 with his mistress. And when asked, why did you do it? He said, well, I know, but we were in a difficult situation. Oh, whereas the rest of the people were in a lovely situation, and they're not allowed to make that decision, but you're allowed to make that decision. So my point here is, I would take it one step further than Representative Jayapal and say, hey, listen, if you're gonna call us murderers, I want Representative Roy right now to say his colleague, Representative Desjardins from Tennessee, is a murderer. Is Representative Desjardins a murderer? You say having an abortion is murder. It's a heartbeat, it's a life, and you're positive it's a life. Is Representative Desjardins a murderer? Did he do 3 homicides, and should we arrest him right now? Go ahead. And they're not gonna answer that, because of course they're all elites, and the number one rule among elites is protect one another. So they'll say, no, we think women are murderers, we think Democrats are murderers, but our guy on our side he had to do it. I mean, he had a mistress and family values and all that, right? So keep it real. And how many do you think Trump is paid for? Come on.
Oh my God. No, I mean, look, we're backsliding, and it's really bad. And across again, the consensus is Roe v. Wade is essentially dead already, and it's being chipped away at the state level. Whether or not this Texas law gets upheld as constitutional, you've got North Carolina or South Carolina law coming up, too, that's going to be voted on. Tennessee, I'm sorry, I'm just gonna go through the states in the South. The point is that, girlfriends and mistresses of Congress people will always be able to access an abortion safely. It's poor people who will not. It is mostly and predominantly women of color who will not be able to who will die. And again, that is where where we're headed. So we've gotta, at the state level, really fight back, because I don't think at the federal level, we're gonna be able to do much.
Okay, we got to take a break here. When we come back, more right-wingers pushing towards violence, and apparently their murder's okay. Like, January 6th, that's murder's totally fine. Okay, we just care about zygotes. Just go one back step further. Anyway, that would affect men, and then it's not murder. You know what's one step before zygote. All right, so and the other story we got to do is insurrectionist Karen. You will enjoy that when we return. All right, back during the social break here, new YouTube members, Denise Marie, Ben Susan, Sheila Red, and Kiana Long. So every one of you guys, thank you so much. They hit the join button below on YouTube. And if you're on a mobile device, just scroll down a little bit further. And obviously anyone can do it at tyt.com/join. Now, a couple of member comments here. Shadows writes in, all they're doing is saving off a full-blown rebellion general strike. People are mad and will take to the streets soon. Talking about how the Democrats are handling the negotiations right now in Congress. Mr. Aragon says, pressing him good. Cenk, feel bad for the guy, but good pressing. Again, guys, Roe's the only one willing to come on. So you should give him a lot of credit for that. Where are the rest of them? All right, Turkosaurus Rex says, how does Franny Fio manage to consistently look so amazing on her home studio feed? That's a nice comment.
Wow.
Okay.
I have no cookies to give, I really don't.
Okay, but you do have amazing lighting in there. That part is indisputable.
Thank you. I've paid people to just hold lights for me. It's all $15 an hour. Don't you worry about a union. Oh my God, the striking, it's incredible.
Okay, one day. All right, Lepton Soup 337 says, hey TYT crew, it's my 1 year TYT anniversary, but regular viewer since 2007. You've also helped me stay sane through Bush, Obama, Trump, moving to another country, a divorce, 2 master's degrees, and a doctorate. You guys are a beacon of good journalism, too strong. Thank you so much. You're wonderful for the super chat donation and for the comment. E. Arthur 779 says, TYT Change Project to teach politicians and activists how to talk to the press and/or framing in general. One day, stay with us. We're gonna do a lot of change, Mama Bear Dragon says, can we express the fact that it's not even a heartbeat? It's an electrical impulse in a collection of cells. No heart, no circulatory or nervous system. Thank you, that is a great point, and I'm glad you made it. Finally, a Mama Bear we can get behind. Brenda R says, happy Redhead Day to my ginger sister Caroline and our fellow gingers out there. Love you all, feisty ginger dragon. And that was, of course, from the first hour. Phil Jones says, this is really what drug companies want, more pills to distribute. That's true, but as long as they're good pills, I'm happy to get them. Hello, somebody says, it's pretty clear why they now allow foreign money to infect ballot initiatives first, because it is our only outlet for direct democracy. Excellent point. Katie says, I've been fighting for progressive policy since I was 16, and now that I'm nearing 30, it's hard not to feel let down. I appreciate you guys keeping strong for us when the fight gets overwhelming. All right, back on TYT, Cenk, Jayar, and Francesca with you guys. Jayar's got more news.
Yes. North Carolina Representative Madison Cawthorn has found someone else to be angry at, or is it the same people? I don't know. Either way, he's mad and his manhood is threatened. That's definitely the case. But what is he gonna do about it? Let's listen.
I'm telling you, when I see the people that are in Washington, D.C. who are trying to insert their woke politics into our culture, trying to destroy Western civilization, trying to take all of our morality away from everyone, trying to make everyone genderless, sexless, and just absolutely godless, I realize that the American people are sick and tired of it. We want our country back, we want our culture back, and if you want to stand in the way of that, we will run you over.
We will run you over. We want our culture back and we want our country back. Who is we again? Who is we and what culture are we talking about? He did say the Western culture, so who's not involved in the West culture? When people like him say, and former Representative King say things like our culture, our Western culture, civilization, it means that everyone else is uncivilized, they don't have a culture, and we have to steamroll them because they're dangerous. What does that sound like again? I know the denials will come, be like, no, we're not really saying all that. But the problem is it's kind of proven with how the response comes from that. So this violent rhetoric, which of course that clip ended with them saying, we're gonna run through you. Physically, proverbial, how exactly are you gonna run through people? We'll find out exactly, because there have been recent polls that have shown this is resonating with the Republican base and how they think political violence is definitely the way to go. So from the Hill, the average American voter is what they had there. The average American voter believes that the US is 2/3 the way to the edge of civil war, according to the new Georgetown Institute of Politics and Public Service poll. The poll showed that when voters were asked to rate divisions in America on a scale to 0 to 100, with 100 being, quote, the edge of a civil war, the mean response was 67.23.
That is not good.
Yeah, continuing on, more than half of Trump voters, 52%, expressed support for leaving the country along political lines, according to a new poll from the University of Virginia's Center for Politics.
Really?
Also,
They want to secede again.
Yeah, so there's 50, let's recap that. 52% of Trump voters want to leave. 67 is the mean of people, and this isn't just Republican voters, people that just believe that we're headed towards a civil war. Again, every time we bring up civil war, I'm always thinking, what does that look like? Either way it goes, I think they have an idea in their head and it doesn't really work. But continuing on, a quote, back to normal barometer. A survey for the first time finds 61% of Americans agree with the concern that the US could be on the verge of another civil war. And additionally, 52% of consumers have also stockpiled food or essential goods in anticipation of social unrest being tied to a resurgence of COVID-19 in the coming months and or the election. So real quick, before we open this up, there's just a quick chart here about the people who were worried about a civil war. Again, this is amongst the whole country, not just necessarily Republicans who are having daydreams about it. But the question here is, how much do you agree with the following statement? I'm concerned that the US could be on the verge of another civil war. So the strongly agree, the darker purple is 40%. Somewhat disagree, and then strongly disagree is a whole that pie there.
Yeah.
So yeah,
all right,
are we headed?
Yeah. So look, Cawthorn and his like are driving us towards there. Obviously, any rational person does not want to go there. And so let's talk about Cawthorn first. So he said, then we're gonna run you over. Now, if that was the first time he said it and he didn't clarify his political rhetoric, I wouldn't think that it was that big a deal. But this is actually now nearly half a dozen times he has insinuated violence, including references to the Second Amendment, which is clearly a reference to actual weapons and using weapons. And he has said that you should be wary of government tyranny and use the Second Amendment against it. That means murdering government officials. So when he says the right wing should run over the left wing, basically, given that context, he is once again insinuating we don't care about the law. We're just gonna come and hurt you. We're gonna physically endanger your lives. And of course, on January 6th, they brought that to fruition. Charlottesville, they brought that to fruition. The synagogue bombings, these are all right wingers. The truck bomber in Washington, D.C., the pipe bomber, all right wingers, all doing violence, all saying they're doing it for Trump and the Republicans. And we're whistling past the graveyard here. It's so obvious that they are driving the right wing into actual violence that is happening in the streets of America, and it only threatens to get worse. Now, on the other points that he made, I also would love if he ever does it with a real reporter, which is very unlikely because corporate media would kiss his ass too. Right-wing media obviously is on his side, and he would never come on a progressive show because he's a coward. But if he did, I would ask him, morality, do you support Donald Trump? He's gonna say yes. Donald Trump was raw dogging mistresses while his wife was delivering, and they were porn stars. Are we talking about morality? Are we talking about family values? Is that the family values we're talking about? I can go on and on with dozens of Republicans who are the most immoral people, and we could prove it 1,000 times over. Representative Jayar, we talked about earlier in the show, he's a Republican congressman from Tennessee, had 3 abortions that he paid for, 2 with his wife, 1 with his mistress. Is Jayar immoral, yes or no? Is he immoral? He's your goddamn colleague. He paid for abortions, he had a mistress. Is that family values, is that morality? Okay, you guys don't believe in morality at all, so take that word out of your mouth. And genderless sexist. Okay, guys, just be honest with us, okay? You hate gay people, you hate trans people, just say it. What does that mean? Oh, no, I don't, but I think we should discriminate. They shouldn't have the same rights as us. They shouldn't go to the same bathrooms. They shouldn't be on the same high school teams. They shouldn't have the same rights. So now when we get to the foundation of Western civilization, does he actually mean the tenets of Western civilization, or does he just mean white people? Because the tenet of Western civilization is equality, equal rights for everyone. It's in our Constitution, and it is a core part of Western civilization. And you just said you don't want equality for trans folks, gay folks, by the way, earlier black folks. But okay, let the past go, haha. Okay, but right now, in that statement, you said you were against equality. That is actually the tenets of Western civilization. Basically, be honest. You're saying, I don't care about Western civilization. All I care about is white people. And that goes to the point that Jayar made. That is what we care about. Well, who is we and who is they? And you're constantly attacking minorities because you think in racial terms. And then you project that onto the rest of the world. Can you believe Democrats are fighting back against us by talking about racism? How could they fight back against our ugly, vicious racism and homophobia and bigotry? You see how it's the Democrats' fault? No, I don't see that. You're a coward. You don't believe in Western civilization. And you're dangerous because you're demagoguing people into violence, which of course you will not partake in, like Trump. You will run. Trump said, oh, go into the Capitol, oh yeah. And then he ran like a little bitch back into his bunker and watched it on TV. Ooh, they're fighting for me, they're killing cops for me, yeah. And that's the same thing Cawthorn will do. He ain't gonna do no Second Amendment rights. That guy's a coward as far as the eye can see. It's so obvious. All right, Fran.
Cenk, I mean, come on. How do I follow that? Cenk is on one tonight. I didn't think he had any energy left after that Khanna interview, but man, he's finding it. He's doing it. It's amazing. I love, thank you for breaking that all down. Sometimes we need someone to break down step by step the BS. I just feel bad, like that casting agent way back when in the Gillette commercial that Cawthorn was going out for said, no, I don't think we want to cast you in this role. And then he went into politics. He could have had a really robust career. We all knew he was gonna be like some kind of model, you know what I'm saying? And now he's building his brand off of sedition and overthrowing Democratic elections. So that's cool. The other thing I was just gonna say is it is scary that we are, that mentally many people think that we're headed towards a civil war, and the right is stockpiling guns. Of course, we know we can't even get gun control because we can't reform the filibuster. Fun. And then on the left too, I think a lot of people are like, look, it feels often like we're living in two different countries. It feels like we are completely talking past each other. It feels like somehow we are getting away with saying things like Western civilization, which by the way, is the same thing as critical race theory. It's just dressed up language to say you believe white people deserve more than people of color and equality scares you to death. But I do think that in the face of all that, you're like, what do we do? Do we, is it, making more robust FBI units to go after white supremacy? I don't necessarily believe that, but I do think that they haven't been taking it seriously at all. And I also think they haven't been taking it seriously for white supremacists in the ranks of police and federal agents. We know that, right? We've seen those reports. Nothing happens. We don't get reform. The last thing I'll say though is you need a vision. Trump, for as disgusting and apocalyptic and racist and xenophobic his vision was a vision. What are Democrats putting out there, right? We didn't get our Bernie Sanders vision, at least into the White House. It still exists. And what we have is Joe Biden and moderates who, even if they get something passed, and I'm not saying it's worth nothing, but there is no vision. There is no cohesive vision to say, no, our future is not civil war. Yes, our future is a multiracial democracy that does have equality and justice for all. Yes, we can be true to our Constitution. Yes, we can move forward. We don't have to be tribal.
Yeah, last thing I'll say here is, for God's sake, to follow up on Francesca's point, do some framing, do some branding, get out there and put out your own message. So flip the frame on Republicans. They want to talk about race because they want to trigger white fragility. White folks saying, oh no, don't call me racist, but we didn't call you racist. Teaching about slavery isn't calling you racist. Why are you taking it personally? But apparently in Virginia, we lost that battle. So why don't you flip the frame and say, why aren't Republicans for equality? Equality is something that is part of the American brand. It's a core to our ideals, our principles. And it's hard to say, no, I don't think gay people should be equal. I don't think black people should be. I don't think Mexicans should be equal. I don't think trans people should be equal. Let them make that case. but the Democrats never effectively challenged them on that. And finally, I'll channel Anna Kasparian here by saying, you could fend them off, as we've discussed here on these issues. And they say, by the way, you ever notice how Cawthorn never talks about economic issues? Because he's for lower wages and he's for making sure that you pay higher drug prices. That's why he's trying to distract you with squirrel, race, trans people, genderless, etc. Because he's robbing you and he wants you distracted during the robbery.
Bottom line.
All right.
Another break, yeah.
Yeah, all right. We got to take a break. When we come back, insurrectionist Karen. Back here during the social break. First of all, Orion Pax, thank you. He just joined, or they just joined by hitting the join button below on YouTube, tyt.com/join for everyone else. Let me give you some programming notes first. Guys, you got to check out the conversation live if you can, 5:30 p.m. Eastern. It comes on right before the Young Turks. On Monday, I'm gonna have Larry Lessig, and he's gonna talk about Facebook and how the machines have taken over. He's gonna critique Glenn Greenwald's take on the Facebook issue. It is a super interesting conversation. Do not miss that. That's at 5:30 p.m. Eastern. But by the way, sign up for the podcast of the conversation, and then you won't miss any of them, including the interview earlier in the week that Nina Turner did with Noam Chomsky. So how cool is that? We got a progressive network here where Nina Turner interviews Noam Chomsky. So, and we've got all, the conversation is amazing. Please check it out. All these things going on. Okay, now speaking of other fun programming, tonight after the bonus episode where we have some excellent extra segments for you guys, for the members, then we're gonna do Game Busters. That's available to everybody on Twitch. So 8:30 p.m. tonight and every Friday, twitch.tv/TYT. No one who watches Game Busters doesn't think it's fun. Everybody loves it, so check it out tonight. And then, guys, you can make videos for us, and there's many other careers here that are also possible. So check out tyt.com/careers, especially if you want to get in the business of doing videos. Caroline Johnson started that way, and you see now she's a host on Rebel Headquarters. It's very real. You could do it as well. All right. Now we're going to members. Tall Glass of Shut Up Juice says, we want our country back. Like Jayar said, from who? We are the United States of America. So doesn't that mean he and his ilk are enemies of the United States? And as such, should be removed from his position in the American government. That's right. And Isaac says, inequality doesn't need to feel like oppression. Stop saying that. It's what it happens to the privileged, when it happens to the privileged. These are good points that we should keep banging on. What's the antimatter says they want us to think we're fighting fascism when we should be bringing working class whites into the progressive fold. That is definitely true. BO wrote it on Super Chat. Cenk, thanks for that interview. Though the lack of progress is disheartening, it gives hope at least seeing debate and discussion continuing. Keep it up. Nathaniel Cox said, excellent discussion with Roe, sending $20 for a haircut. Get a fade, brother. Totally agree. I'm gonna get one this weekend, but the $20 doesn't go to me. But I appreciate the thought. And guys, I'm gonna say one more thing about that, why that Ro Khanna interview was so important, and you should give Ro credit for it, because then finally one progressive legislator listened to the base and heard us out as to why we think what's going down is wrong. And he could take that back into the caucus and say, I got news for you guys, the base is not happy with how things are going and they don't know it. So thank you to Ro. All right, back on TYT. We got to get to the stories, but I haven't been able to say thank you to the Twitch audience all show. So I'm just going to read the folks who sent in subs, including Zola Juro, who said, "Great job, Daddy Cenk." That's funny. And gifted 10 subs. That's the important part. Shifty gifted 12 subs. But KJ, the DJ, Gentle Dragon, Display Gig, Last Outlaw, Ghost of Toller, Dragon Annie, T Bartimus, and get a load of this, Brett Ehrlich. They all gifted subs on Twitch, and thank you guys. Twitch.tv/TYT. We have a great family there. All right, Jayar.
Going. MAGA rioter from January 6th, Jenna Ryan. She gained some notoriety because she was one of the people who was known from flying in from Dallas to DC on a private jet to participate in the insurrection and the rioting that went on at the Capitol. Now, she has just been sentenced to 60 days in prison. Now, I know what you're thinking because I thought the same thing. Only 60 days? But she's thinking the opposite. She's surprised that she's getting even 60 days in prison because she's been spouting off on Twitter and Facebook and anywhere else she can find to talk about just how proud she was of that moment and just how much she's not gonna pay for it. Let's go to this tweet that she had from back in March when someone did call her out when she was just gloating online. So the first person tweeted her, "You're gonna go to jail, you're going to jail." As you know, that well-known gif there with Oprah Winfrey. And in response to that, Jenna Ryan responded to that person and said, "Definitely not going to jail. Sorry, I have blonde hair, white skin, a great job, a great future, and I'm not going to jail." She missed all punctuation there. "Sorry to rain on your hater parade. I did nothing wrong." Okay, well, is it you did nothing wrong? Or is it that you have white skin, blonde hair, a great job, and a great future? Because I don't know, those things I don't remember being a part of a legal issue. Anyways, in addition to that, during that day, she decided to pose outside of the Capitol saying with that bunch of nothing that was done wrong right next to her there, throwing up a peace sign with the American flag wrapped around her in her scarf there. These more flipping her, tonguing, what's the term? Thumbing her nose at the system as this all goes. It was the tongue
It's
or
definitely
nose,
not tonguing.
or the
no.
ear.
You're tonguing the system.
Maybe it's the eyebrow. I don't know. It's one of those things. So
they definitely tongued the system on January 6th. To be honest, too hard, too much.
We're gonna tongue the system. Not only that, but she was also caught on video saying this is what they also put forward in her trial. "We're going to effing go in there." This is Jenna Ryan. "Life or death, it doesn't matter. Here we go." So again, I'm still trying to find out, did she do anything wrong here? I can't figure it out.
Yeah, I gotta jump in, Jayar. So that last statement on life or death, that gives you two really important facts. Number one, they knew what they were doing was wrong. She thinks there's some chance we're not gonna make it out alive. You don't think that if you're having a day at the park. Okay, I don't go, "Hey, well, let's go to the picnic, life or death." Okay. So all this revisionist history about, oh no, they were just tourists, what's the big deal, right? They're American patriots. No, going in, they were saying life or death. They were also chanting "hang Mike Pence," which would have been death for him. But so she absolutely positively knew they were breaking the law and they were playing with people's lives at that time, okay? So, and then the second part is going in, she's like, "Life or death, I'm coming in, okay?" Afterwards, she's like, "What, you're arresting me? Why are you arresting me? Why are you grabbing me? Why are you grabbing me? Wait a minute, you said you were going in life or death. How could you possibly be surprised that you were arrested?"
Because
no, you're not surprised. You just thought, "Oh, I can get away with anything."
Well, first
she just said it.
I think the surprise was for the arrest, and the second was for getting anything done because she's white and she's blonde. Now, Francesca, I do want to hear what you have to say. After you listen to now, Jenna Ryan upset about the consequences, and she was speaking outside of amongst a few reporters. Let's listen to her really quickly.
I think that is a travesty. I think that everybody should be able to tweet without being persecuted and treated like crap. So it's, watch what you tweet, because if you tweet, you can go to jail. I regret ever tweeting, but it's a free country and I'm allowed to say, it's free speech.
Francesca, it's time for you to check your Twitter account because if you tweet, you go to jail.
Just like as I'm, storming the Capitol and punching a police officer in the face. Oh my God. Yeah, this is all the, I'm reminded of OG Chappelle, the good Chappelle, who said, "I'm sorry, officer, I didn't know I couldn't do that." And you get big, "I'm sorry, officer, I didn't know I couldn't do that" vibes from Jenna Ryan, who, again, back in March, I was like, oh yeah, she's right. Like her snippy little, "I'm blonde and I'm not going to jail." Like, I was like, I hate you because you're right. And it turns out she wasn't. She's been sentenced. So, right? We got 60 days. Maybe that'll be lessened to, I don't know, she's got a lawyer. She flew on a private jet, you guys. Yes, Trump and the working class vote. The private jets and the boat dads and all the business owners that could close down for a few days just to like some light treason. Like, I just, again, January 6th just implodes the idea that Trump speaks for any working people. Like, wasn't it a Wednesday? Get out of here.
Okay, so the problem is that the right wing will believe anything. So she says that, I'm sure conservative media will repeat that 1,000 times, and people will think that she actually got arrested for tweeting. No, she got arrested for admitting a crime on Twitter. Okay, so if somebody said on Twitter, hey, I just committed double homicide, you could find the dead bodies at my house and here's the address. They didn't get arrested for tweeting, they got arrested for the murder, which they confessed to on Twitter. And so that's the same thing here. She's like, I'm going in here to break in to this building and I'm gonna hurt some folks because life or death, right? The problem isn't the tweet, the problem is the confession and the picture that went along with your law breaking. That's like posing, in my analogy, that's like posing next to the 2 dead bodies and going, what, now you get arrested for taking pictures? No, it's the dead problems, the bodies that's the problem, not the picture.
It's just the way they operate because they've been, as you point out, Francesca, it's been proven over and over again that this belief that because of who they are and their beliefs and the color of their skin and apparently the color of your hair, a brunette can't get away with this, that you can get away with it because that's what happens. These are things that we battle with. So every time they say these libs and these softy snowflakes are always complaining about how white folks get off and the justice system is unbalanced, you're saying the same thing. So if you say that the white blonde lady's gonna get off because you have a future, who doesn't have a future? What does that say about everyone else?
You know what's happening right now, which is my favorite storyline coming out of the January 6th stuff for the 500 people who have been arrested and some who are serving time right now and awaiting their trials, is that they're realizing that the prison system in this country is bad. It's inhumane. There is poor nutritional value to the food, if you can even call it that. There's rusty pipes, there's all kinds of stuff. And they're speaking out about that obviously through their lawyers. And they're like, this is an injustice. And they've got like their monocle, like they're just like, how dare you, sir? And like, what did you think this was? And it's just this really funny backwards way that they're getting woke on like the prison system. It's like, yeah, buddy. And the best line, oh, and Louis Gohmert, Representative Gohmert is talking about, oh yeah, the conditions are as bad as Guantanamo. No, they're not. I'm sorry. And they're echoing the, we should go to Guantanamo. Go. How about a prisoner swap? We'll move those guys that've been in there way too long. Move them over to where you are. See how, and then you guys can be pen pals. And then you can swap stories.
Yeah, so every part of this story is amazing, and it goes towards what Francesca was saying. This is, and I want to be clear, this is not white privilege. This is white right-wing privilege. Because if you're a left white person, a white person on the left, and you do a protest of an oil pipeline, oh no, they're gonna kick your ass and put you in jail. And nobody's gonna be talking about, did you know prisons were bad? Like, yeah, everybody knows, but if you're a right-winger, I mean, insurrectionist Karen here basically says like, you're arresting me? Can I speak to your manager? Who's the manager of the federal government? Okay, I was just doing a normal bloody rebellion here. We were just having a fun chant about murdering the vice president, and this guy wants to arrest me. Can you do something about him? And that's exactly what's happening here.
She said it right here in this real quick. I want to read this second quote from this tweet really fast because she's mad at people that are gloating. I'm not going to prison for the things that I said or standing in front of the broken window. Yeah, sure. It's for walking into Capitol for 2 minutes. And what the judge says is to serve a deterrence to others since I have a high profile, which I got after the fact, thanks to mainstream media smear campaign. Okay, sure.
No, it's for breaking and entering. It's a crime. They're like, oh, isn't that just for black people? No, as it turns out, there is a little bit of equality in the country. Sorry to break it to you, right wing. Okay, all right, we gotta go. Bonus episodes for the members. You guys are gonna absolutely love it. More of this stuff at tyt.com/join. We'll see you there.
Old school's pitched to me from Cenk. It'll just be me, you, Jesus, Ben, and maybe Michael. And we're like, okay, cool. I can do that every week. As you can see, me, Jesus, Ben.
When you make the order, it says, don't exceed $20.01. So I'll just order literally anything to get it as close to that as I possibly can.
I'm sorry that I ordered $45 worth of food and got it.